Okay, so like I was saying, having duplicates in your data is not ideal, and especially when it comes to working with SSIS. Now, again, this section, like I said, we're focusing on change data capture. In another section, we're going to focus on partition switching. So partition switching is primarily a metadata task. So uh, you will have two tables or two partitions, and you basically just switch out the pointer. So there's not really a whole lot of computational work that's to be done there. So that process, once you're doing the actual switch, is almost instantaneous. Um, but during the uh, actual data transfer portion, that's a time consuming process. And so our goal is for that time consuming process to minimize that time, to minimize that effort. So we, instead of looking at all the data, we just want to focus on the changes. Um, like I said, too, with the, well, I'll wait for a second. First of all, we want to have a place to store our states for our change data capture, and hopefully I'm not going too fast. I'm just kind of walking you through the code right now before I get. This is some of the setup that I do before um, building the package. So I actually want to have a states table, a table for the state of the change data capture. So um, we'll create a table, and we'll use this also for. You can use this for not just our NASDAQ, but if you have other jobs as well, they'll go into this. Um, so this is the script you're going to want to use. There's a few important things to note here. First of all, um, by default, uh, the collation of SQL Server is uh, it's CI, which means case insensitive. So typically, if I was to write table or table, both of those operate the same, so it doesn't really matter. Um, but for this particular table, how it's going to be used, you have to have this name needs to be lowercase. State also needs to be lowercase. That's just the way that it's going to operate later on in the SSIS package. It's looking for these particular names. So I don't know why it's uh, case sensitive. So I guess instead of CS, it's going to be their correlation is their correlation will be CS. Anyways, just basically don't think you can have this as a capital. It needs to be lowercase. We're going to create a cluster on this. And another thing too, though, I wanted to mention was this on primary. So uh, this primary part right now, a lot of times you can omit that because that's pretty much just the default. If you don't specify otherwise, it's just going to be on the primary. Um, primary is referring to the file group. And right now, everything, like I said, everything is going into primary, which is the default location. It's the default file group. When we get into partition switching later, we'll probably create a specific file group, and then we'll want to refer to that file group for the swaps, for the switches. But right now, this is just a table that you want to create, where it's basically as we change the data, this is where the logs are going to be stored. So you also want to go ahead and execute this stored procedure. It's a system stored procedure. So execute SYS is a system, SP underscore CDC for stored procedure, change data capture, and then enable, and then underscore DB for database. So we're in the NASDAQ database that we created. So just select this and execute it. So basically what you're doing is saying, okay, we now have change data capture enabled on the NASDAQ database. And then let's see, this is, you could set, so to disable it, you would run a very similar code, just instead of it saying enable, it would say disable. You need to be in the database also when you do that. This is a good one to have handy. This is CDC SP. This is a help. So a lot of times you'll see like help text or help help this, help that. And so this tells us this is the capture instance that we've got running right now. I probably should have saved this for a little bit later to show you. The reason is you won't really get much use out of this help because at this point you guys don't actually have a change data capture enabled on any tables. So this is what you're going to run to enable change data capture on your table. So you're going to execute a system store procedure. The store procedure is SP for store procedure underscore CDC for change data capture underscore enable underscore table. Follows a real similar pattern to before. And we're going to input several variables. So the first variable is, notice also these are, crap. Basically, these are just character strings, so you have to have the N in front of it. But so the first one is we're going to do this. You can specify the so you can specify the schema. So DBO, that's really important because since we have multiple schemas here, the source name. The source name is the name of the table. So I'm doing NASDAQ stocks is my table name. Leaving the role null. Let's see. I've got this one commented out. The capture instance, you can call your instance if you see it down here. You can call it whatever you want. So I could have called it NASDAQ stocks specifically, but if you leave that, if you don't do that, then the store procedure will automatically name your instance. So it will name the instance by by basically the schema underscore and then the table name. And then right here, it's 0 or 1 for net changes. So basically change data capture, there can be multiple changes that occur to, like, let's say a particular row. The row can be inserted, it can be updated, it can be deleted. And so a lot of people will put this as a 1 because, yeah, they want just net changes. For me personally, I want to keep everything. Just, I think I know you don't really have to keep everything, but I would rather have it at my disposal and then filter because you can always filter, but you can't always go back and unfilter, if that makes sense. So I like to have more information than less. And then you have to specifically put in all the columns that you're trying to capture. And so these are the columns in my OLTP table. So we got stock ID, stock name, stock price, stock date time, and load date time. Those are the ones that were important to me. I don't really care much about the system versioning columns from the temporal table. So these are basically the columns that I want to keep track of and see if any one of these columns ever changes, I want to know. And then again, we're doing this on the primary file group. Something that's important to notice too is with the change data capture enabled, sometimes you want to work on your table and you don't want to capture every single change. Like if you want to truncate or delete information from your table, it's good to know how to disable that. So you would do, again, real similar, you disable, you run this command, the store procedure that disables your change data capture, and then you would just run through the list of what's the schema that it was on, what's the table name that it was on, what's the instance. And you can see here, this is the instance that, because I've had to disable this table before, this is the instance that you see down here. And that's the instance that was given to your table. So, and if for some reason you mess up and you forget, well, crap, what was my instance? What was my table name? Just look at your information schema, and then you see you're in the right table catalog, so NASDAQ. Now, what's your schema? Well, we know that it's CDC, and then what's your table name? Well, your table name is probably going to be something familiar. So we were looking at NASDAQ before. So, okay, here we go.